My fiancé Ollie and I have been together for 4 years, living together for 2, recently got engaged. Our relationship has been great for the most part. One of the few things we disagree on is animals. I love animals and Ollie feels indifferent towards most animals. To give a little background about me, I've always been an animal lover. Throughout my childhood, my mom hated animals, especially dogs. My mom never let us have any pets, and she used to tell us that once we were adults we could have whatever animals we wanted. When I moved away for college, I lived on campus for 4 years, and therefore couldn't have any pets. I've wanted a dog for as long as I could remember, but up until recently it wasn't in the cards for me to have a dog. Ollie and I currently live in a not-so-pet-friendly city for renters. I always lived in apartments that never allowed pets, even with a pet deposit. When Ollie and I met, I told her about wanting to get a dog someday. Ollie told me that she doesn't like a lot of dogs, but would be open to the right dog. This was in the very beginning of us meeting. I basically made it really clear that I will own a dog one day. Throughout our relationship, I would occasionally bring up wanting a dog. Ollie would remind me that our apartment doesn't allow for pets, which was true. Ollie and I agreed that once we moved into a place that allowed for pets, we would look into getting a dog. About 2 months ago, Ollie and I moved into a house just outside of the city we work in. The house is a good size for the 2 of us, plus extra. The landlord is pet-friendly, and the house has a huge, fenced-in yard. It's a much more residential area, and there's a dog park about 3 blocks from the house. On top of the house being perfect for a dog, I'm in a financial place where I can afford a dog. I make very good money and I don't have to travel for work. I'm mentally prepared for potential pet fees and other expenses for having people watch the dog. Since we're finally settled in the house, I decided to mention to Ollie again about going to the shelter and looking at the adoptable dogs. Only this time, Ollie didn't have an excuse for why we couldn't get one. After a few weak excuses, sometimes we go away, Ollie broke down and told me that she doesn't want a dog. In fact, she's never wanted a dog. She was hoping I would forget about my dreams of wanting a dog. I'm not sure what to do. I'm trying to reason with Ollie, but she said her answer will always be no to a dog. She just doesn't like them and doesn't want them. She basically gave me an ultimatum, either her or my potential dog. I'm feeling shitty about this, because I always made it clear to her that I was going to want a dog someday. I feel like she was banking on something unrealistic, and now she's putting me in a lousy spot. I am a 39-year-old male, and I lost my son in 2019 due to a chronic heart condition. He was 15 years old. It was devastating and I just couldn't take it, especially when my family did little to nothing to support me during these difficult times. They didn't bring my son meals when he was at the hospital. They didn't let me go home and rest even for a few hours. They didn't take care of other things while I had a lot to deal with. I wasn't offered any help, just words. They'd just talk but do nothing. Despite the struggle, I've created an account for my son's college fund and kept putting whatever I could get at the time, and my son would talk about that a lot. He was depressed but always believed that he was going to get better and continue his education and attend college. I started saving money to keep him motivated and to make him feel like he could be like any other kid with hopes for a good future. He had a very close friend that's about the same age as him. They were friends for 5 years, and I can't express how his presence in my son's life helped him through the worst days. Sometimes his friend would spend the night with us and try to get my son to do activities and lighten up his mood all the time. To be frank, his friend was closer to him than his own family. He never stopped visiting and asking how I'm doing after my son's death. He'd show me handmade projects he made for my son and as a way to remember him, and we'd sometimes just sit and talk together or cry together. Last week, while I was with my family, my sister asked me what I was going to do with my son's college money. I didn't want to mention this, but since she asked, I told her that I will be giving the money to my son's friend. She barely even recognized his friend and was confused and said that my nephew deserves this money since he's family. My mom agreed that I wasn't thinking straight and that I should help the people close to me, family, and that my nephew has a right to go to college, and I was wrong for giving this opportunity away to someone else. I didn't know what to say. They kept pointing out that I was making a mistake and how my nephew will resent me if he finds out. Thing is, my nephew wasn't close to my son. I don't even know why he'd be bothered. My sister went on about not being able to afford my nephew's college. I told her this was my decision, and I felt more comfortable that way. She started lashing out, constantly texting me, constantly wanting to talk to me, and ending up arguing. When I snapped, she had my mom calling me, basically guilt-tripping me and telling me I'm wrong and that I needed to think about this. It's just too much pressure and I'm feeling lost and unable to figure out how to deal with this. My sister Amanda never met her bio mom. My dad raised her alone until she was barely 1. My dad and my mom got married in 1992. Amanda knew that my mom wasn't her bio mother. She started pressuring my dad for information on her mom when she was around 17. My dad always gave her vague answers and refused to talk about her bio mom, which put a strain on their relationship. Enters our uncle and revealed the family secret. Apparently, Amy's mom wanted an abortion. She was 19. But my dad and his parents were able to bribe her. They offered her money if she followed up with the pregnancy. And she accepted. My grandparents sold one of their houses and gave her half of that money to Amy's mom when the pregnancy was viable. And the other half she received when she waived her parental rights over Amy to let my mom adopt her when she was 4. My uncle wasn't supposed to tell her that. My grandparents were furious. Amy stopped her crusade to meet her bio mom and her relationship with my dad went back to normal. Amy never mentioned her bio mom again. Dad got her into therapy after that. A month ago, Amy found out that she was pregnant. The pregnancy was an accident. She switched birth controls. The problem being, Amy is about to start her surgical residency and her hours are insane. It is basically impossible to raise a baby while working in that rhythm, so she wanted an abortion. The problem is that Mark, her fiancé, 6 years together, wanted her to keep the baby. It caused a big fight. In a move to convince Amy to keep the baby, Mark told Dad about this. Until that point, no one in our family knew about this. Dad talked with her, and they got into an enormous fight. Amy got the abortion 10 days ago. Mark ended up breaking up with her. She is obviously really sad. My dad was acting like a jerk. He was pretending that Amy didn't exist. He didn't want to talk or see her. So on Christmas Day, we were exchanging gifts. When everyone had already finished giving each other gifts, Dad got up and gave Amy her present. He gave her an envelope in front of everyone and told her to open it. It was 3 pictures with something written on the back, a name, an address, and a phone number. Dad told her that he was tired of babying her, that this is a photo of her bio mom and her 2 sons. That was her bio mom address, and that he contacted her bio mom and she is willing to speak with Amy. He gave her Amy's number. Dad thinks that they will have a great relationship since they are so similar. Amy broke down crying. I ended up in a fight with Dad, called him a monster for doing that to her. He just said he was just tired and left. We ended up leaving and she spent the rest of Christmas crying on my shoulder. She is a mess since that. My younger brothers called me a Grinch for making a scene and ruining Christmas. My mom was silent during the whole thing. My parents have been giving me the cold shoulder since Christmas. My husband and I, both in our early 30s, have been together for over a decade and made the decision to not have kids. I like kids. I have nieces and nephews. We just don't want them for our own reasons. He had a vasectomy, which only a few people know about. Our families are aware we don't want kids as they've asked this before during different major life events, our wedding for instance. We recently bought a 3-bedroom home with a nice yard in a nice area. Excited to show our new home to family and friends, major upgrade to our previous home, we hosted a housewarming. During the party, one of my sibling-in-laws, Alex, made a few indirect comments about all this space. And kids would love it in our house, etc. Eventually they asked point blank when we were having kids. I made a light-hearted joke about it, which is my go-to for this question. Oh, well, I like sushi too much to have to give it up for a pregnancy. Plus not drinking for pregnancy and breastfeeding? No thanks. I tried to make it very light-hearted and laugh it off. Most people just laughed along. That seemed to anger Alex and I was told children are a joy, and a good mother puts her kids before everything else. I agreed, children are a joy. I like spending time with the nieces and nephews. And obviously I can't be a good mom if I chose sushi over kids, so I just won't be a mom, paraphrased. still trying to brush it off in a gentle way because I'm not trying to start a fight by telling them to stop asking in front of everyone, because I know my tone will be seen as rude and abrasive. We move on. But Alex is still annoyed and making little comments in their group about how flippant I am about it and how when it finally happens, then I'll understand. My husband heard this and jokingly said, well, if she gets pregnant, that'll be a problem for the divorce lawyers. That seemed to piss them off more, but they stopped. With holidays coming up, we have not been invited to Alex's usual Halloween bonfire. When husband spoke to his parents, they told him Alex was annoyed we were so careless and callous about our child-free status and to say what we did, and they realized we had taken permanent steps to ensure we never had kids. That we know they had to do if to have kids, etc. And we are AHs to just not care. I feel bad because they did do if and lots of fertility treatments to have their kids. And even then they still had a few miscarriages. I can't imagine wanting kids and struggling to have them and then deal with miscarriages. But at the same time, I'm so tired of justifying living my life how I want. I feel terrible my joke was taken the way it was and that I hurt my IELTS. I truly never meant for that to happen. After the bonfire this weekend, we will be reaching out to have a heart-to-heart, if they'll accept it. Either way, I'll be apologizing for hurting their feelings, let them know I love their kids and them. But I will also be firmly putting down any further attempts to discuss our child-free status, if the conversation is about changing our minds. I have not told them our reasons for being child-free, so I think perhaps if they are willing to listen, I'll explain them and hopefully the conversation can be constructive.